or I could.
All right, welcome to another installment of LA Guitar Hang. I am so happy tonight to have a great buddy of mine, a blues and rock and roll icon of the LA scene, a bad motherfucker, a friend of mine, Brophy Dale. How's it going, Brophy?
It's going good, man. Thanks for having me do this thing, man, and looking forward to just chatting and yakking and
Yeah,
where it goes,
I'm
So
glad to have you, man. I've had a bunch of jazz guys on the show so far, and I've really been wanting to get some different kinds of music. And I've always loved your playing, and we've been buddies for a long time.
yeah,
And now I'm like, man, let's get Brophy doing it. And we finally got you, so I'm really happy about that.
yeah, man, absolutely. I miss not us playing or something. I remember you came to one of my gigs a couple of years ago, and we were playing outside downtown Long Beach or something. You were walking, and I go, hey, come here, I just took my guitar off and gave it to you, like, oh God,
Oh, I'm gonna tell that story. Believe me,
You remember?
we gotta drink a little bit before that. Yeah, Brophy is
There you go. There you go.
was that the guitar I played?
Yeah, it's this Gretsch duo jet that's got some custom P90s that TV Jones designed that fit in where Dynasonics fit in.
Yeah.
And I got this in probably like 08, 09 or something like that. And anywho,
That's a
blah,
cool
blah.
guitar, man.
I know, man, and you make it sound great. I was like, oh, geez, what am I doing?
The problem every time I play with you, it's like I always feel like such a dork, man, because you have like this presence on the stage that's like such a swagger to your playing, and like you always look cool and you got the whole vibe, and I'm just up there like, ooh. So it's always like funny. I'm like, I can't be as cool as Brophy. He's the cool cat,
man.
you know.
You're playing some cool shows, like, because I never learned to play proper.
I don't know. You sound pretty good to me.
I learned in a bar room, and like with my buddies, and never really did serious lessons, and and it was just kind of went in a certain direction. It was like, okay, I'll roll with it, like okay.
But that's you sound great though, man. So let's go back to like your beginning. So you were born in Texas, but you grew up basically in Detroit, but then you'd said you lived in Africa for a little while.
Yeah, I was born in Texas, and then my family moved to Africa.
What part?
It was called Nyasaland, which is called Malawi now, which is right in the center of Africa. And it's
how the hell they end up there?
Well, my dad was a missionary. My dad is a Southern preacher. As you can see why I turned out the way I'm at.
I was going to say you are the epitome of the Christian preacher.
Well, I am. I'm keeping the faith, buddy.
All right, man.
Rock and roll. But then we were there for a few years, and then we moved to Tanganyika, which is now Tanzania. Mm-hmm. And I know you've probably heard of Serengeti National Park.
Yeah.
And we were just watching the thing on NPR, and they happened to be in like Serengeti 2 days ago on this thing, and we were literally, the mission was 120 miles from the nearest big town, and we were 40 miles from the gates of Serengeti. So in our back porch in Africa, the second place, it was like there's always hyenas in our trash cans, and so it's like that was like, get out of here, it's like, so that was kind of normal as a kid, versus when we came back to the States, you're hearing sirens, it's like, it's just whatever you grow up with. It's like whatever you grow up, it's like,
it's two different jungles, Florida,
right? Huh?
Yeah, it's two different jungles.
Absolutely, man. Now I'm in the urban jungle, it's like,
yeah.
I mean, I started writing a song about a year and a half ago about, like, and I want to come back to the city, where I can hear some helicopters and, the police chasing somebody, and like, it's like the country's too quiet, sort of, like David Byrne did from Talking Heads, did some stuff like, this used to be a parking lot covered with daisies, you know.
Yeah.
And it was that whole thought process was going. Anyway, I don't know where I'm getting off on there. I haven't even had enough to drink at this point.
Well, so
But,
you went to Africa before Detroit, correct?
oh, absolutely. And then we went back to Texas.
Okay.
So a lot of we went back to Texas when I was 10. So, and I was in Texas till I was in my late teens.
Yeah.
And then through some things in my life, I ended up in Michigan.
Okay.
So, which was a real godsend to me. It wasn't really, I didn't really live in Detroit, but I lived in Ann Arbor. And
Is it near Detroit, kind of?
yeah, it's the University of Michigan. It's about 35 miles from Detroit. And
Okay.
it was like in 68, 69, it was, you know, you had all the Motown, you had MC5, you had, you know, it was like, you had Iggy, you know. I remember being in a bar and this crazy guy runs in the bar, you know, and he jumps on the table and he grabs our pitcher of beer and like, and he drinks it, you know, and I'm like, who the hell's that? Oh, that's Iggy, you know. So that's, you know, so when you're 19 and that shit's going on, like, you know, so it was a different life there than South Texas, you know, where my parents are trying to get me away from um, sin and music and
Trouble. Yeah.
all trouble that you know, just normal stuff that you do as a teenager. I wanted to get into music and they didn't want me into music. They wanted to focus me towards their church. And I had my own church to go to. So,
Church
you
of
know,
Soul.
exactly, you know, and it wasn't like I hated my parents or anything. But I, you know, as a kid, man, I just knew, and my parents were, my dad was fairly fanatical because he's a
Mhm.
preacher and you're supposed to do everything the preacher's kid's supposed to be good. Instead, you know,
Mhm.
you get caught smoking, you get caught drinking, you get, you know, and you're 14 years old and you're like, what are you doing with that record? Well, who is that? Well, that's the Rolling Stones. Let's spend the night together. Oh my God, you know. So, you
You're
know, I had a little different way of life that I wanted to go. So
yeah.
I'm just trying to, anyway, so I turned out okay. Okay, good night.
Yeah. Do you know a local guitar player named Jacques Lejour? You know him?
No, I do not.
He was on he was on this podcast. I think he was like the third episode. Great local jazz guitar player, and he grew up in Detroit too.
Ah,
And he came from, you know, the Motown background and the soul background, and he's a, you know, became a jazz guitarist.
did he know
But
like Earl Clue probably?
I think so. I think he talked about that. Yeah,
I'm sure
yeah.
he probably, anyway, sorry, but
No, so anyway, you're the second guy. So we were talking about the Detroit scene, you know, from the jazz side, but he was very well aware of Iggy and the MC5, and because
yeah.
Detroit had everything, man. You know, the
And the
hard
thing is,
rock.
at so many of those shows back then, you'd have somebody. I mean, I remember, you know, there'd be these shows downtown. There'd be like this huge rock band, like The Look, you know, and then there'd be somebody like Miles Davis after that. So you'd have
Mhm.
this real, I mean, and shows back then in the early 70s, man, it was like there was, you know, it didn't matter whether it was, I mean, I remember going to a blues concert and the headline was Sun Ra. I don't know if you Sun Ra, you
Yeah,
know,
man. Sun
and
Ra. Space is the
wow,
place.
and I was like sort of melting at that point in my life anyway. So it was pretty far out there, you know, to see Luther
Wow.
Allison in the afternoon and then and then see Sun Ra, you know, like whoa, you know,
That's cool, man. That's how music used to be. Like you'd have radio stations playing like Aretha Franklin and Led Zeppelin and, you know,
at the same
whatever.
time. Yeah,
Right.
that'd be like right after, you know, and then you'd hear, you know, like, you know, who knows, Foghat, and then you'd hear Clarence Carter, or you'd hear, you know, some Leonard Skinner,
Yeah.
because you know, anyway, yeah.
So that's cool. So you grew up in that scene. And how old were you when you started playing guitar?
Um, Probably like 13-ish, you
Uh-huh.
know, and some of the first tunes I learned to play, which just in the last 2 days was House of the Rising Sun, which
Mhm.
that guy just died who wrote
Yeah, the
that.
Animals.
God,
Forget his name.
yeah, and it was all that thing, just like those rundown the patio thing like that. I guess what you call that.
Yeah.
And that was a hard thing to do, but it was and I just learned from friends, who would show me, and
Yeah.
do more than I did, and I wanted to take flamenco, but my folks wanted me to play piano because they already had a piano for my sister. So it was like, you can't get chicks with a piano at a party. Guitar, man.
Guitar is the way.
Stupid kid stuff, that I don't know, but
Yeah, well, we all want to pick up girls with the guitar. I mean, it never worked for me, but I'm sure it did for you.
well, I don't know. It took me a while. So
Mhm.
anyway, it's but it was more than that. Also, it's just it's just the passion of it and learning, the different kinds of music, because Michigan had a lot of that, a lot of blues too.
Mhm.
So and there was rockabilly bands even in the early 70s there, like way before it came back as a favorable thing, so
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that because, like, I know, I mean, you don't think of yourself as a rockabilly player, but you have rockabilly in your music.
yeah.
Actually, didn't you coin the phrase bluesabilly? I saw it on your Facebook page.
Well,
I like that.
it's it's been used off and on, and it's like I don't know that I coined it,
Yeah, but it's a good reference because when I think of your playing, you sound like a mixture of blues and rockabilly. Like there's
yeah.
both going on. And you could say early rock and roll too, but it's not strict rockabilly, although I'm sure you could play like that, but you're kind of a mix of both, which I think is really cool.
I,
But so it was big in let's say pure rockabilly. It was obviously a 50s thing, and then I
I
know it came back in the 80s with Brian Setzer and all that kind of stuff.
the
But
cast,
you were saying that in the 70s it was still going on, like there was a
well,
scene
there
for
was,
that.
yeah, I mean, there was still an underground thing of it going. There was a band out of Ann Arbor called the Silvertones, and man, they were fucking killer. And they were like, God, it's like, and I got long hair. My buddies would go see them. And they go, they're really good players, but they look like dorks from the 50s, It's like, and still to this day, what's his name? The guitar player. I mean, he plays around Michigan, and he's this great player, and he never really got this national breakout.
Yeah.
Oh God, why can't I think of his name? But he's a great player, and he studied all that stuff, and he knows, he delved into it, and he's got all the good right hand stuff. But he plays great blues, and he'd play a big box guitar most of the time,
Mhm.
and one of those guys who has tone,
Yeah.
that some guys can I mean, come on, AC/DC, they got tone.
Oh yeah. It's all in
Like
the
it's not,
hands, man.
yeah, exactly. So it's not, but yeah, there was some other Billy bands around that were doing it, and probably a little more punk edge to what they were doing. I say punk, but it was just aggressive, and probably as much as aggressive as like any of the shit in the 50s, man, because I mean, you look at Link Ray
Oh
and,
yeah, that's punk
um,
rock.
and yeah, absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
um, Johnny Burnett Trio, they were,
Uh-huh.
they were just fucking crazy.
Yeah.
Train kept a rolling, Paul Burleson, and like, so,
Yeah.
uh, but but the Stray Cats really brought it to the forefront again, like Lee playing upright. You didn't see
Right.
hardly anybody playing upright like that, especially on any kind of national level.
Right.
You mostly saw jazz guys, or there'd be some blues guys I'd see doing it,
Yeah.
but nobody like slapping it. And the thing is with Lee and with Brian and Lee, from an early age, they were very schooled.
Hmm.
I don't know if you know about Lee Rocker. I mean, he was playing cello as a kid. Both of
Okay.
his parents. And I'm having a senior moment here.
That's all right.
Um, his dad is Stanley Drucker, who was
Okay.
the first clarinetist for 60 years in the New York Philharmonic.
Oh, wow.
From the time he was 19, he got that position all the way till he retired when he was 80. And
Holy crap.
his mom was like, it could be second chair. So sometimes they would, we'd be playing some club in New York, and like, hey, Stanley, how you doing? It's like, oh, I'm sorry I'm late. Yeah, your chairs are down. Lady go, oh, your chairs are down there. Sorry I'm late, man. Scotch, please. I mean, they're the coolest, So Lee had
Yeah.
great, but he was very schooled. So when he switched to upright, he had all that. He could hit note. It's like some people they're flashy and do a lot of, but Lee would hit a note, and he knew music. He could talk music, So, and of course Brian's just phenomenal.
Yeah, Brian, I love Brian Setzer,
Oh,
man. And he's got a lot of jazz in his playing, and
absolutely.
he's got all that Les Paul shit from the
Yep.
50s and 40s, and like he
Jazz
knows how to
stuff.
write big band arrangements. He knows how to read music. He can arrange. He's
Right.
great,
Yeah, he
man.
writes a lot of those horn stuff,
Hmm.
uh, and and he is, like through the years, he's morphed through a lot of different cool stuff, like
Hmm.
not just rockabilly, but he did some classical jazz rockabilly, like
Yeah.
records, like, wow, where did that come from,
Well, he did that one. What was it? Either Beethoven or Bach or
Yes.
something, where he
Yeah.
arranged it for his group.
Yeah.
Yeah.
uh,
I took my daughter to see his group like 3 years in a row for the Christmas stuff.
oh yeah.
And she loved it. It was the whole Christmas thing, and Santa Claus would come out. But the best part of the night, man, when the band would go away and he would just do the trio and they just play straight up rockabilly. And
Yeah.
I'd be in heaven. I'd be like, oh, this is so good. Because I
Yeah.
love rockabilly stuff, man. I don't
Yeah.
really play it, but I love it.
Yeah, and a lot of people say, well, you're rockabilly, but I have the worst right hand, and you have to have a really good right hand to play rockabilly good. I'm
But
kind
your
of,
sound is kind of rockabilly-ish, and some of the chords that you play, like you play a lot of those
yeah,
6/9 chords and stuff that a
yeah,
lot of blues players don't play.
yeah,
And you've got that kind of the sound is kind of twangy and bright, but in a good way, not like, like harsh, but like a nice warm twang to it.
yeah.
And that's part of that sound. You know what I mean? Like that's the guitar.
That's
That's
the
your main
guitar.
axe, right? You're Fleming.
Oh yeah. You should have
Nice.
seen that thing in. I think Chris built it for me in 2000,
Uh-huh.
and now it's just beat to hell, and it's
But
just
it's got stories in it now, though. You would
it's
be
got
broken in.
yeah, absolutely,
Nice.
Tom Petty has a tune. God, he co-wrote that with somebody. The stories we could tell. And remember that guitar in that museum in Tennessee, and the scratches on its face of every time it fell. Oh, the stories we could tell. The stories
Yeah,
they
yeah.
could tell. So
Sure.
like your guitar is like I mean, you have guitars, and some of them are a little more worn in because you play them more for certain gigs or whatever. So
My problem with my guitars is I flip them so often that they don't have much of a story. I'll keep it for a while, then I get to sell it and get another one. But
well, see,
some
I flip mine, but they kind of go this way, and then they're still in my hand. So I'm a goofball when it comes to that shit.
I've got a few now that I've had for a while. So I got one my favorite callings. I've already done a couple CDs with that and probably hundreds and hundreds of gigs. So that one's getting some funk to it. So so you were in Detroit, so you were kind of like a hippie kid, probably, like everybody listening to Clapton and Hendrix and the
Oh yeah.
Beatles and and rockabilly and blues. So it was kind of everything was going on at the same
Yeah,
time, right?
blues was like huge on me because
Hmm.
Clapton and Hendrix and Zeppelin, they were all basically blues based, and then
Sure.
the Stones, of course. I mean, I love the Beatles because as a kid, it was like, who do you like better, the Stones or the Beatles? It was like, well,
Both.
I like both. The
Yeah.
Beatles are melodic and all that, but I like the Stones because they were just friggin' bad boys, and I gravitated towards the blues, and they're like, I felt like I could play that easier than the other. Not, it wasn't taking anything away from that, but it was just like
Yeah.
gravitated more towards the blues than the other. So, but um,
The Stones have more funk. Like the Beatles to me are they sound British. The Stones sound American to
Yeah,
me, you know,
yeah,
and the Stones have that, you know what's cool with the Stones is that they really play behind the beat. Like when you play a Stones song, and it's kind of sometimes it feels weird to lock in because they're not dragging. The time is solid, but they're playing behind the beat and it's kind of ragged. And that's what
yeah,
makes it so cool because the Beatles are like right on, they're tight.
yeah,
They're super tight, which is, you know, they were in a good way. It wasn't like stiff or
yeah,
anything, but the Stones were just ragged because
yeah,
that's how those Howlin' Wolf records, man, and you know, Muddy Waters, those
yeah.
records are just like, I don't get down, get down, get down. I
I
mean,
mean,
it's just
first
ragged.
thing as I heard was like, what really got me in the blues was the Stones because I heard Little Red Rooster. It's like, oh, this is
Mhm.
great, Oh, who's this guy? Who's this? I thought Mick and Keith wrote this guy named Willie Dixon. Who the hell is that? You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
Willie wrote a ton of stuff for Muddy Waters and all that stuff, man. And he's,
Yeah.
and just a great writer and a great bass player.
Yeah.
So, and then that kind of introduced me to that, and then you look at the Beatles, like you said, also. I mean, Harrison was a Perkins fanatic.
Right.
He loved Carl Perkins, and he could play all that stuff. I remember people going, "Well, George Harrison is." And this is like, early '70s. Well, George Harrison isn't that good. He's not like Jimmy Page. He doesn't shred, dude. It's like, no. Listen to what he's playing. He can play all that Chet Atkins stuff. He's like,
Yeah.
he was more articulate. And anyway, yeah,
Yeah. Well, the Beatles, they were just, they had different influences because like they came more from like, you know, Chuck Berry and Elvis. And the Stones did come from Chuck Berry, but way more Muddy Waters, and that
yeah,
was the
and
difference.
Wolf and
Wolf,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I
That was
mean,
the difference, you know.
yeah, yeah. Some huge, you know, and they both did rather well.
Oh yeah, and believe me, man, you know I'm a Beatle. The Beatles are still my favorite because I'm a sucker for melody. Melody
Yeah,
is everything, and they were, you know, the greatest songwriters of all time as far as
yeah,
melodic, you know, and
yeah.
that was their show tune background, which the Stones didn't really have. You know,
Right.
the Beatles, you look at their chord structures, man, it was like, you know, Gershwin or Cole Porter or something.
Yeah, and all these cool harmonies, where um, the Stones didn't really have the harmony thing, and they did it, but it was more like just swagger and cool
Right.
swagger. But the Beatles is like you know Lennon and McCartney had all this great harmony going on, and then you got
Yeah.
George and probably doing the third of the, I don't know if behind whoever's doing the fifth or whatever,
Yeah.
or uh, or the fifth and third. I forget what I need another.
Yeah, one of those.
Yeah.
But the
What are the numbers?
Stones, you know, people don't think of the Stones like when they compare the both. It's like they think of Beatles as great songwriting, and then they think of the Stones as groove. But man, the Stones wrote so many great songs too,
Oh
though, like
yeah,
tons of them.
yeah,
And they're under. I think they're underrated for their songwriting. I really do.
yeah. And it's amazing. I saw them 3 years ago when they came around.
Oh yeah,
4 years ago or something like that, and we
they're
had
still
pretty good
good.
seats. A buddy of mine called me up, and I got these 2 extra tickets. I want to give them to you and Candy. You want to go? I was like, fuck yeah.
Yeah,
And we had pretty good seats, looking right down on the side, right onto the stage. And I mean, they were amazing. And I'd seen them only twice, and the other time was in '75.
wow.
Um, that was a long time ago. And we drove all night, and it was see them at Cleveland Stadium, and brushed our teeth with tequila in the morning, and then went in and my buddy, and we left the rest of the gang out in the car, and every once in a while we'd get out of the crowd and go to the car and have a sandwich because we didn't have any money. We only had money to get into the show, so we'd
Yeah.
go back there, pound some more tequila and try to sneak it in or whatever. But by the end of that, we were like, because there was about 6 bands all day, and Jay
Mhm.
Giles was on there, and who I love also.
Yeah, yeah.
That's like, to me, they're like the part of the American Stones. In a way, they had. Uh, well, Jay Giles was a great guitar. He was actually a really good jazz player too.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've heard any of that stuff that he's
You
done.
know,
Like
I
some
don't
more bop stuff, I guess.
really, because I remember, I mean, they had a bunch of hits in the early 80s, like they
Oh
became a
yeah.
pop band, but I know they were a blues band way before that, and I don't
Yeah,
know that
absolutely.
stuff.
Yeah. But I mean, after Jay Giles and he was out of that, and they split up. You know, Peter Wolf. Actually, I still love Peter Wolf, and I like his writing because he's very soulful and a
Yeah,
really cool songwriter.
yeah.
But Jay Giles and uh, put out a couple records. He did one with Magic Dick, who is the harp player in
Hmm.
Jay Giles, and a lot of it's real like jump blues, and it's like, wow, where did this come from? I didn't it's cool when you hear a guitar player kind of jump in a different genre and play stuff that you weren't really expecting, especially, I mean, I like jump blues. I can't play it for shit, but it's like I love it, and I got a lot of respect for it, and guys who play it well, so
Yeah, the jump blues is a big California thing because it's
yeah.
weird. Like when I first moved here in 2001, like, people think of me as a jazz guitar player, and that's what I do a lot of, but I have always played the blues. I mean, when I
uh,
growing up, I always played the blues. I always played in blues bands. I love the blues. And when I moved out here, the blues scene was so different. In Florida, it was like there was a lot of blues players, but I wouldn't really call it a scene. It was just people who played the blues, but there was no kind of I'd say like a community, like with a look and an image. Because when I
yeah,
came out here, man, there was an image and a look to the scene,
yeah,
I was like, whoa, what's this? And it was a lot of jump blues and a lot of greaser look. And I
yep,
was like, this is not what Florida was like. And my blues playing was, I'm into the Chicago guys, Muddy and BB
uh,
King, a lot of BB King and Freddie. And when I came out here, I didn't hear guys playing like that really. It was like some other, like I'll go see blues bands and I'm like, I don't know one of these tunes. Like it's just weird,
and also it's like West Coast is a lot of swing, and then it's like
Mhm.
there's a lot of stuff that gravitated out here from Texas, because Texas
Mhm.
has their complete own different thing also. Like, I
Sure.
mean, T-Bone Walker originally was from Texas and came out here,
Mhm.
and but like the Texas scene, man, when they came uh, through Michigan, like the first uh, 2-3 records the T-Birds did, and all
Mhm.
that. It was like going, well, this sounds pretty cool, man. It's like, and Jimmy's playing simple stuff. I can do that. You go to play it and you go, fuck, I can't play that. And it's so
It
simple, you can't, but it's just his
yeah.
phrasing and the way he plays it. And so there was that whole Texas thing that I loved also. But but West Coast was just, you know, uh, and then being around Chicago, and my folks lived in Chicago, so off and on I'd go visit them there. And after they left Michigan.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, most of the blues around Detroit was more the Chicago flavored, like Magic Sam with West Side
Yeah,
Chicago
man.
stuff,
That's what I gravitate. That's my
Money So
sound is the
Young, and
Chicago.
Jimmy Dawkins, and because I love the West Side um, Chicago stuff a lot, man, and
West Side Soul, man. That's a classic record.
oh, Luther Allison, man. When,
Yeah.
when I first, you got a second?
Yeah, man.
when I flew home, because I was in this dormitory, in this boarding parochial school. My folks put me in South Texas when they moved to Ann Arbor. And Ann Arbor at that time in 68, 69 was the dope capital of the Midwest, is what they called it.
Whoa. Whoa.
So you
Okay.
have Berkeley, you have Ann Arbor, and you have Berkeley.
Uh-huh.
East, Midwest, West Coast.
Yeah.
And it was like these intelligent, hip people who were doing all kinds of wacky shit. So I fly home, my folks fly me home. This is 68, 69 for Christmas, the first Christmas they lived up here. I'm like, oh, cool, well, I'm going to go downtown, check out downtown, see what it is. I'm 17, I hear this music coming out of this bar, this big guy with hair down here, and I'm kind of short hair, because I wasn't allowed to have long hair in this Christian academy.
Yeah.
And so I go, wow, man, just let me open the door, let me listen for a minute. You go, well, I can't really do that. He's, okay, man, I'll let you in. And right about that time, the door just flew open, and this guy come walking out with this red 335 with this long ass cord, and it was cold as fuck because it's Michigan around, between Christmas and New Year's, and it was Luther Allison. And that was the first time I'd ever seen Luther, man. I was just like, holy shit, God, I want to do that. So Luther was a huge fan, and he used to come to Ann Arbor a lot from Chicago before he moved to Europe, and we'd go see him all the time, buy him shots of tequila and get him pot. He loved pot and a few other things, but girls. And
was he like, when he walked out with his 335, was he still plugged in and playing? Like, was he working the room?
Oh yeah, long cord. He just and it was a really small room. It turned out to be this house food restaurant. By the time I moved there a couple years later, ended up being that. And anyway, so and I just remember that so much, man. It was like this little bitty place, is probably the inside was maybe as big as my house. I had a small house, so but
yeah,
it's it was cool, like when you're 17 and somebody impresses you, and you just go, whoa,
Man, that's when I talked about this with somebody else, but like I kind of miss those days, man, because like, you go to a concert or you hear a record and it would blow your mind so much that it would just entrance you, like, oh my God, it was like a life-changing thing. And the older you get, the less you get of that. Like, like if you think like, when's the last time did you go see someone or hear something where it was like, oh my God, it's going to change my life? It just doesn't happen as much. It's just, I miss that so much. Cause when you're a kid, it's like constantly, it's like, what's this? What's this? What's this? Cause you don't know anything yet, and
you're kind of a sponge, and you're just getting all this, you're sponging it in, really, the first time, I heard Disraeli Gears.
Yeah.
And I remember a few years later, long story short, probably about 5 years after that, I finally got a guitar and stuff again. All my stuff got ripped off, and anyway, so I quit playing for a few years and got this regular construction job. And then when I got a guitar again, I sat down with Disraeli Gears, and it was, Albert, Clapton was doing like
Born in a Bad Sign, right?
Outside Woman Blues, and he was doing like, it was Albert King he was playing, and they go, man, it sounds like that other guy. Remember that? Oh, Albert King, so it's like, and man, I just like delved into it, and I was trying to learn everything off of there, it's like all that weird stuff, and didn't have the gear for it, but you learn it anyway, right? So.
People forget how important Clapton was, because I think of Clapton like as the first modern rock guitar player, like Chuck Berry invented rock and roll on guitar, right? Pretty much. And then, but if you think about, early Beatles, early Stones, right? There were guitar solos, but it was more like a melody or a riff like that fit the song, but it wasn't like this long extended, like virtuosic blues solo. And Clapton was the first guy to do it.
Right. Cream, it was like that first huge, was it like him or Hendrix? But they were both, but Hendrix was a little different than Clapton. Clapton was more blues.
Yeah.
Hendrix was blues. But at the same time, Clapton was like do those long solos.
Yeah. Well, Hendrix obviously took it to another level, but Clapton came first.
Yeah.
And, Hendrix loved Clapton, and that John Mayall record, you listen to that and it's like, that's like 1965, I think.
Yeah, the Bono one.
Nobody played like that in rock and roll. Granted, he was just playing, Freddie King solos and all that, but not with that volume and that intensity. Like he had brought it to another level, and it was like, people hear that now and they go, oh yeah, it's cool. And it's like, no, you don't understand. nobody played like that. He was the only guy in rock and roll, only white guy to play like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and it was, you know, and then sure Hendrix came out and then it was like all got blown open. But
Yeah.
yeah, man. So okay, so you're a teenager, you're hanging out in Detroit, having fun, Ann Arbor, and I'm assuming by this time you're playing in bands, you're gigging in bars, you're doing all that kind of stuff,
Yes,
right?
sort of. I had a time where I didn't play from a little bit out of high school
Mm-hmm.
to probably about 74-ish, 75 when I started playing again.
Mm-hmm.
And I got a guitar, and I lived in Omaha, Nebraska for about a year and a half, just working a construction gig for my
Mm-hmm.
uncle. And I got in a situation where I kind of had to stay there for a minute. And then I was like, I'm getting out of here. You know, all I got is acoustic. I had all my shit ripped off and beaten up and all that. And my apartment got robbed and
Oh man.
blah, blah,
Wow.
blah. So I kind of quit playing for a few years. And then, so I moved back to Ann Arbor, and my first big unemployment check, I went out and bought a PV Classic amp with 212s and a Telecaster.
Nice.
And I started learning Disraeli gears, you know.
Wow.
And then I met a buddy, you know, who's happened to have, you know, we started jamming, and next thing you know, we got kicked out of where I was living. We were starting this little band. We got kicked out of there, but these guys from Ohio came up and go, you know what? We're starting this band, and we need a guitar player and a drummer. And they were coming up, and they were doing some business, if you will, with one of my roommates to get the band started. So, so they would come to Ann Arbor to take care of business, go back down to Ohio and sell all this stuff so we could have a bunch of money for gear. So we ended up playing that, and I played in that for a year in Ohio. And that was the first time that I got to really start playing. And it kind of hit me hard, because the one gig that really hit me is I was really scared at first. I was really scared. But then I got better and better. And then we had a manager, and we got signed to some deal in Chicago. We all went to Chicago, South Side of Chicago. Inner City Blues Productions signed us. You know, we had this great black singer who looked like Marvin Gaye, like a young Marvin Gaye. Mm-hmm. And he could sing his ass off. He could cry when he wanted to, the girls.
Wow.
It was pretty cool, man. And so we had this makeshift manager, and he got us this gig in Detroit at this place called Ethel's Lounge. It was like Mac and Grand, and it was you know, Albert King played there and all this. And so we were going to he said, this guy from Memphis is coming there, and he wants you guys to back him up, and then you have to back him up, and you have to back this other band up. It's like, okay, let's go. Well, you know, so there'll be 3 nights, and you do 2 sets each night. Well, it was this guy named O.V. Wright. I don't know if you ever heard of him.
I don't think so, no.
He was like the Memphis soul singer. And I had no idea who he was, because he was just, you know, I'm like 22. This guy just got out of jail for what? What did he get out of jail for? Oh, tax evasion. I'm like, you know, whatever. And then the guy is like this amazing singer. You know, he wrote Nickel and Nail, Ace of Spades. He wrote, man, he had a string of really cool hits, man. But he was a really soulful guy, and I didn't know who he was. So we were doing like we would do 5 songs. We do 3 songs with the Sugar Man, who'd get up there and do this, put sand all over the floor and do this dance, you know, on there. And then we do like a set of O.V. Wright stuff. And so we were doing about well over 2 hours, and then we take a half-hour break and then go do another 2 hours.
Oh,
so
wow.
We did 3 nights in a row with O.V. Wright that way, you know.
So you were really like paying some dues at that time.
Oh, absolutely. And they hired a horn section. So we had, you know, and I was kind of ended up being musical director of that band at the time, you know. It was not to cut anybody else down, but the drummer and I think we're a little above everybody who, you know, I don't really write charts out good, but I had to write chord progressions out, and we're playing in B flat for a piano player who couldn't do that, and E flat and F, and it was, you know, and there's like minor changes, and, you know, 625, and then just different turnarounds that they weren't really familiar to. It was more straight ahead cut blues with that band.
Yeah.
Not like I said, not cutting it down because it was pretty cool.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
But it was some work, and we were all staying in a school bus out of town about 40 miles. That's where we stayed every night.
Uh,
I mean, literally, when we came into Ethel's lounge, man, my buddy and I, we were in my Chevy, and we were behind the school bus, which, we painted it all psychedelic, and this is 75. So,
yeah.
so it's all painted psychedelic, and, there's shit inside. So, we found this park, where we could, like an RV park. We parked out way outside of town. So we stayed out there at night. I'd go to Ann Arbor, me and my buddy, we'd stay there, and then we'd come in for rehearsals and then go back to Ann Arbor. So we didn't have to stay in the bus.
Yeah.
With the rest of the band, which was
yeah
cool, So, because where we lived in Ohio was about 2 hours south of there. So we weren't going to drive home every night for that.
Yeah.
And then we did Saginaw Civic Center about a month after that, which was pretty amazing. So, so that was a real eye opener for me playing with him, and like, wow, and then you find out later that this guy's a famous guy, and you played with him, had no idea who the fuck he was.
Yeah.
You go,
That's how it happens sometimes. You play a gig with someone, you're like, I can't believe I played with so and so. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So anyway, I kind of rambling there, but
No, that's cool.
Ovi was cool, man. He was just like amazing voice. If you check out Ovi, right, man, it's just
I gotta check him out. There's so many people I don't know about, man. I'm
well,
teaching. No, I was gonna say I teach this class in it's like a history of American popular music, and like I'm constantly checking out these artists that I never heard of, and it's like, oh, Jimmy Rogers, and whoa, holy shit, and like early 50s R&B, like pre-rock and roll, and it's like, what? And you just you can't know it all. It's like I'm trying to learn about all the jazz guys, let alone I about the major names, but there's always, what about this guy, what about that guy? It's just like they're all so good.
Yeah, who was the backup band for Fats Domino? Who was the backup band for Ray Charles? And it's like,
right.
And then you find out that all these, Alan Toussaint, it's like, who was all these guys? And they're the well-known ones. And then like their band was like these badasses who,
I know, there's just so many.
People. Yeah, then the list goes on. I mean, I've had people just ask me, oh, don't you know so and so? Like, no.
It happens to me all the time, and I'm not a historian. I'm really not. Like, I know people like, oh, this record was made in 1956 and so's on bass. And I mean, I'm not bad, but like, man, I don't go that deep, I'm terrible with names and things like that. So,
well, some people enjoy that angle of it too. And so, and that's cool. I mean,
it's very cool.
It's great, because I can learn from them, it's like,
sure.
I figure you can always learn from anybody pretty much.
Learn from anybody, man.
Yeah.
So like, who was the next? I'm assuming at that point you just gigging, playing with everybody, touring, doing all that stuff. Who was? I know you have played, with quite a bit of well-known people like Lee Rocker, but I'm sure that's much later. Who are some of the other people that you maybe notable that we might know about that you played with at the time or toured with?
Well, I played around Ann Arbor, as bands do. That one broke up in Ohio, moved back to Ann Arbor, and played a bunch of stuff around there, and then got in one band where we just sat around and played for 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
And I had no idea these guys were all that good. And I couldn't figure out why they hired me, but we all got along. And then once we got a gig, it was great. So then, anyway, a few years of playing in Ann Arbor, never really backed up any. Well, we backed up, actually, I say we never backed up. We Taj Mahal.
Yeah, he's pretty good.
No shit. But basically, we didn't really back him up. We opened up for him, and he used our gear. He used my amp and my buddy's piano.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until later on when I moved out here that I which was like the end of '86. that
So what brought you out here? You just wanted to come to LA just like everybody
well,
else?
my girlfriend, when I met her a year and a half before, said, you know, and she was a very video, had a master in telecommunications, and she says, well, someday I'm going to move to LA and I'm going to make movies. So, you know, and so she had sent out, I don't know, like 200 resumes, and then, you know, we were living together, and she said, yeah, I got a call from these guys, you know, in California, and she'd had some others that she just kind of turned down. And she goes,
Mhm.
so I'm going to move. I am going to move to California. I told you that. So if you want to go, you can go. If you don't, I want you to go.
Yeah.
And he goes, what are you going to do here anyway? What are you going to do? What are you doing anyway? You're playing in 5 bands. You ain't doing shit. Because
Yeah.
I quit my job 2 years before that. I had a regular job. I drove like 18 wheelers and, you know,
Mhm.
yard work at midnights and and I made okay money driving truck, but I hated it. It was a
Mhm.
union
Mhm.
warehouse work, and sorry.
It's all
And
right.
so anyway, said yeah, I'll move out here. So she got a job working out here for American Honda Motorcycles,
Mhm.
and so put all our stuff in big moving van, which wasn't shit. It was like one
Yeah.
corner of this huge, 40-foot semi truck. But they drove
Yeah.
the car in there, and she goes, "Yeah, I decided that I was bringing out my 7 guitars." Like, so, thanks, man. So I came out here and just started, knocking on doors, and it's like, being a fairly big fish to like, fucking eat squat, you know.
Yeah, it humbles you, doesn't it? Especially at LA is a guitar town, man.
Uh,
That's why I'm doing this podcast, man. There's so many great guitar players. I mean, you can just keep going
oh,
on and on and
God.
on.
And you meet them and you just go, oh fuck, So I don't, you know, that's why I think I met you at Ciravello's, or maybe one of those blues
I
jams.
think it was El Dorado.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah, that was my first jam. That was because when I came out here, like I said, I was already in the jazz scene and gigging, but I was like, man, I got to play some blues. And I seeked
You were
out,
jonesing.
I was jonesing, man. And like I went to the El Dorado and I loved it, man. Every week there'd be a really good house band. And
Yeah,
I would go early to see the house band because there was a lot of good players, and then, it's like any jam. There's a lot of shitty players too, but
yeah,
but they're all like that. But I mean, I met guys like you and Greg, who's one of my best friends, Greg Mitchell, one of my
yeah,
best friends, and like all the cats, and it's such a great community, and I just loved it, man. I'm like, and I'm a guitar freak like you are. So all these blues guys play all these vintage guitars, and I'm just like, oh, look at that guitar and this and
yeah.
that.
I know.
So awesome,
When I
man.
met you, it was just like this. It was like you were so easy to react to, because we were like, oh, what's that? Oh, you use that, or are you plugging in straight tonight? Okay, yeah. What? Oh, that's 65 deluxe. Yeah, that's not bad. What do you got in for a speaker? It's like, what did you bring? Like it's like, so
Yeah.
gear is part of the whole fun thing, with
Oh yeah.
players, who dig it, so
Yeah.
yeah. And you were one of those guys, so it's like,
Yep.
um, you know,
Yeah, man. So
so
then you get here, and now eventually you're gigging, you're doing your thing. And then how did you get to the Lee Rocker gig? How'd you play with him?
well, let's back up a little bit.
Okay.
So 87, I played in a band for almost a year with some guys that the drummer ended up in Lee Rocker years later, and
Hmm.
I met him, and the horn player and other guitar player in that band ended up playing with James Harmon, and just finished doing about 14 years with Mavis Staples, good
Oh
friend of mine,
wow.
Jeff Termis. So these other relationships from years ago, everybody kind of, people grow and do other things. Then that kind of dissolved, and I got in a band called Luke and the Locomotives, and with Robert Lucas, who that was for about a year, and he ended up being the singer for Canned Heat for years. He was
Mhm.
really a young guy, great voice. He was a great slide dobro, national style, solo player, but then with a band, and he wrote cool songs, and he had this huge big voice. So I worked with him for about a year. Then that kind of dissolved, and it's like my wife's like, well, I say my wife. So my girlfriend and I got married. I'm still married to her, which is pretty fucking cool.
Oh,
So
Candy. Okay.
yeah, Candy,
That's
yeah.
awesome. Yeah,
And
yeah.
33 years,
Congrats.
yeah. So which is cool. So she's like, you need to do your own band. Like, oh God, it's a lot of work. I'm in LA now, like
Yeah.
so I started this band, and I found some of the people out of Luke's band, and then some other people. And as you get in bands and things evolve, and so I had a band called the Tone Dogs, who worked for years, different people. Eddie Munoz was in it for a while. There was a band called the Plimsolls. I don't know if you remember them.
Yeah, that might have been before my time.
Yeah, I mean they were huge out here, like with the
Yeah.
Blasters and all that. They were more rock and roll. They reminded me of a band called Moby Grape when I first heard them in Michigan.
Yeah.
And anyway, Eddie played with us for a while, and then that kept evolving. And my buddy Dave Gore, who
Yeah, Dave's great. Yeah.
and he's actually a full-on classical guitarist also.
I know. We always talk about that because I love classical guitar. So whenever I see him, we'll talk about like Segovia or Julian Bream or something,
He tells me about these people that I got this new piece I'm working on. Who the hell is that? And they're like, well, you've never heard of that person? You're like, well, I got like 600 pieces from this guy, and I'm learning them all. I was like, Jesus, So, but he's this down home guy that him and I just clicked, years ago. So did the Brophy Dale for a long time, and off and on. Through that, I would take these other gigs with I would play with different blues players. There was a guy named King Ernest I'd worked with off and on, did some runs up the coast with him. And he's passed away since. There was, God, can't think of his name offhand. And I did a tour with a guy named Smokey Wilson, who had this amazing player, man. He was signed on Bullseye, and I did an East Coast Southern tour with him for a little over a month. And he was a guy who played a Strat, and the first three, the E, the B, and the G string were all nines.
Really?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
And they were all old strings. You always keep these old strings, like, no, you don't ever tune my guitar. It's like, he was great, man. It's like, God, and he was a good showman, man. It's like, yeah.
All those blues guys are, man. They gotta be.
He had cowboy. He had two hats in the van. You keep like, don't meddle with my hats. It's like they're on top and the back. After the whole van was loaded, and those go on top. So you don't mess with my hats.
What was up with all the blues guys in the 80s? They all started wearing cowboy hats.
Yeah, I don't know. Smokey had two of them. And it was wild. It was like, you travel through that, man. We did probably a good week in Florida, down the east, and then down to Miami, and came back and went across. What's that big lake down there?
Lake Okeechobee.
Yeah. We had
it's a hellhole. It's a hellhole, man.
In the middle of nowhere, a whole bunch of crocodiles and shit, or alligators, and it's like,
yeah.
And we couldn't find a 17-inch rim that he had on one tire. You can only find a 16.5-inch rim from some station. And this is like, there's no cell phones back then.
Yeah, no.
You gotta walk someplace, so I'm the token guy who's gonna walk, because I ain't gonna get shot, you can walk. So, okay. So
yeah,
I'll go find the help, like we're playing, he's riding the tire, it's like, did we get close enough, then we had to have it towed, and we had to go find it. It was a real experience, but I mean, we played some great shows with him, and I had to do like three, 4 songs at the beginning of it and then introduce him, Bullseye recording artist, Smokey Wilson, and he'd come out and go, he'd like make these noises on his guitar and start scratching his nuts, and like people would go nuts, man. There'd be like 800 people in Baltimore Blues Society out there going crazy for him.
Yeah.
Doing some gigs with Jack Johnson, man. It was like, I think he passed away like about 2-3 years ago. Another great guitar player, blues guitar player. Yeah, but it's like Smokey was really cool. I'm trying to think. I did some other shows that weren't blues in the early mid '90s. I played with this woman, Sharon Marie Fisher. Also, I would do all these side gigs as much as I could do, and then try to throw my band in as a backup for her. So every year she would do these gigs at. Did you hear of a place called the Palomino out here?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was like it closed in '95, and so she would always do these Christmas shows, benefit for kids with AIDS.
Mm-hmm.
She had AIDS, and she was one of the first women that was on the trial treatments, and she was doing really good.
Mm-hmm.
So she was like friends with these, like Bonnie Raitt and people like that. So
wow,
I was kind of her guy for a while, I guess. So I would do gigs with her off and on here and there, and I'd always do the Christmas show with her. And so I got to play with some really good. We did a show with Delbert McClinton, like we had to do all these rehearsals and learn a set of his stuff. She flew him out and did his stuff, and another songwriter with Delbert was a guy named Glenn Clark, who I did a couple of shows with Sharon at that, and she'd have a horn section and 3-piece soul singers, and it would be like an all-day thing with all these different musicians, and usually a couple guitar players, a couple guys with strats, usually with supers plugged in, cranking B3.
Nice.
Skip Edwards? He was there was a band called Skip Van Winkle, which were from around Detroit, originally from Oklahoma. And Skip was one of these characters like this, and he had long berets right here and a cowboy hat, and he was the best at playing B3 and kicking pedals.
Nice.
He was badass, and he could play like he would do. T. Garden and Van Winkle was huge around Detroit when I first moved there, and in late '60s, early '70s. Who are these guys? And then years later, meeting them out here, I never met him back then. I was this kid, I was scared.
Yeah,
he's a big rock guy, and out here he's just like a normal guy. You meet him later.
Wow. So you did a lot of touring and playing with a lot of people. And then did you only play music? Did you have to do any other jobs to help pay the bills?
I did some odd jobs here and there, like some painting and stuff like that. And people, but man, I really hustled with my own band, and then my own band with. I was, to be in LA and working 15 to 20 nights out of a month with your own band.
That's really good.
Yeah. And some of those gigs, man, you'd go like, fuck, I'm sorry guys, man, but shit, we all made $6 a piece tonight.
Oh, wow.
And some of them were good. There used to be a place called Fay Do, which is down on Adams, and I don't know if you know where Adams is.
Oh yeah, I think I played there one time.
Adams no, what the hell is it?
It's in Hollywood, right?
La Brea. It's like right near the 110 or the 10,
okay.
10 and La Brea.
I remember that place.
Runs parallel with it about a block away, and it's a funky section. I remember doing a gig down there, and my nephew was in town at the time. He was 18. I says, "Come on!" And it was like about a month after the riot. So yeah, come on, man. It's a cool gig. And he's from like up in Idaho, it's like, and he wanted to come down and be this big guitar player, rock guitar player. Yeah, come on, man, come down and see me. And I kind of tell him about it, I go, man, it's last time it was okay, it's like I'm a white guy that has a guitar on, I said there's all these guys, because my little nephew's talking real tough guy, about guns and shit, it's like, and I said, yeah, there's all these guys, these brothers down there, man, like, a few cars away, and they got their pieces out and they're showing them to each other and stuff, and when I told him that, I think I'm gonna stay home tonight and watch TV.
That's funny.
But I mean, the Fado Do is that had some great music in there, man. If you played there, man, you know it's a cool club, and
Yeah, it was like right when I moved out. It was like I think I was playing with this chick singer from what I remember. It was like a long time ago.
uh,
Is it still there? It may have closed, I
yeah,
think, right?
I
It's still
did
there?
about a year and a half ago. I did some friends of mine hired me to play their birthday party,
Hmm.
and they were friends with the owner, and I saw the owner about 2 years before that at their Christmas party. And he goes, Steve, what are you doing? And blah blah. I was like, I just you know, you still have Fado Do going, and he does movie shoots and commercials in there and stuff, and rents it out, makes money doing that. And so he kind of between Paul and him, they talked. And he's like, get Brophy Dale to play for your 60th birthday party, and they're like, really? Yeah. So I played it again. It was great. Nice PA, you know, and it was a blast, you know. So yeah, it's still around. I mean, obviously not now during, you
Yeah,
know, pandemic and stuff, you know. Uh,
yeah.
you know, and then probably the league gig, um, you know, it was 10 years out here just hustling and wearing my ass out. Um,
Hmm.
I mean, a lot of those nights was doing like 5 sets a night, you know, and you're just, you know,
Bet your
of course I was.
chops were good though.
They were, and I was playing heavy strings. You know, it was like I was on a Strat. I was doing 12 to 52, and
Woo,
so you know,
man,
playing.
you're
You know,
crazy.
but you know, you got to do that to get that fucking tone, and you got to play loud. You got to move air to get that. It's
Yeah,
like okay, you don't have to play that loud. It's like, well, if you want it, there's certain ways to get tone, and to me, it was always you got to move those speakers to get certain amount of tones. Now, you know, I don't use big strings anymore. I use like 11s and even one couple guitars I have 10s to like 46 on just regular, you know, and those, you know, I find that I'm playing a lot faster on those, but it's just like it's just kind of whatever the guitar is, you know, as you know, like they all play a
yeah.
little different and they make you play different, you know.
Yeah,
So
I use different string gauges on different guitars. You know, like on my solid bodies, I use 10s. On my semi hollows, I use 11s. On my jazz guitars, I use 12s.
uh-huh.
You know, it just depends. But I don't have, you know, I remember one time I was hanging out. I kind of know Josh Smith a little bit, and I was at his place, and he every guitar has 13s, man. And I'm like, Jesus, I'm like, dude, I can't play
Josh
anything on
Smith,
this
did you
guitar.
say?
Yeah, man, he's
Yeah,
crazy,
I saw
man.
an interview with him, and he I heard him say that, man. It's like
Yeah,
every guitar and he's a great player.
yeah, he
And
is. He
he
is.
also says the same thing as like because he handed it, um they were passing guitars around and the other two guys interviewing him going, well, you know, because he said, well, I play 13s on mine, like his main telly that he plays. He goes, I
Yeah.
yeah. The other guy is going, do you think I can play this? Like, you know, he picks it up, he goes, and he tried
Like,
because
I
he
can't play this.
Josh just rips off some Stevie Ray like that. Um, one of those intros things, scuttle button.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It does the intro to that like, and
Crazy.
Josh is not tuned down like Stevie was.
No, he's tuned regular. And that's the
Yeah,
thing, like strats are stiff to me, man. Like even a strat in regular tuning, you
yeah.
know, it's weird because like you know, I go back and forth and all that, and blues is or just bending in general. It's so much more physical.
Yeah,
And I noticed that if I don't play any blues for a while, I get sissy hands. Like my hands, because jazz is about. I mean, you have to be able to play fast and nimble, right? But blues, you're
pretty articulate.
manhandling.
Right? Yeah,
Yeah, it's you know, and but blues is about manhandling the guitar. And I noticed for myself that if I don't play any blues, I actually it makes me like I play better jazz when I play more blues more often because my hands are stronger. And then when I play the jazz stuff, it's easier. Not that I mean it's different because you know with blues it's not about necessarily accuracy, right? And jazz is not really about that either because the classical guys have the jazz guys beat any day of the week when it comes to that stuff. You
give me
know,
two
with technique.
seconds.
Yeah, go for it. Go for it. Got to make a drink, man. Clear down the throat. So I'm going to tell a Brophy Dale story while Brophy's getting
Oh,
ready.
okay.
So, So
Okay, I'm
I
ready.
had
You don't have to go there. I'm already over it. Okay. Go ahead, man.
So okay, so the whole you say Luther Allison was the guy that came out, right? So Brophy's known as being a guy. First of all, Brophy's a great entertainer. He really like that's something I got to work on. I'll be up there. I'll just kind of stand there, and Brophy's kind of he's got this swagger, and he walks out into the crowd, and it's like people just love that shit. They eat it up. So one night I went with, I think I might have gone by myself. I can't remember. It was a night that I had off. And what was the name of that group, the burlesque show that you do?
Oh, you had to ask me.
Monster.
American Monster.
American Monster, yeah.
Right.
So anyway, so it was at Harvell's in Long Beach, and so I'm there. I'm at the bar having a couple of drinks, and I could tell you guys were having a real good time. The band was like,
that band is definitely about a good time, because you got to dance with the girls, like
yeah. I mean,
it's show with the girls, and that's I guess how I got the itch. I'm a goof, so whatever.
Well, no, there's these beautiful burlesque dancers, and I love that. There are rockabilly chicks too, which is like even better. I'm a sucker for rockabilly girls. But anyway, so I'm at the bar and it's great, and the band's cooking, and it's our buddy Chris Smith, who's a good friend of all of ours.
Yeah.
And great bass player.
Miss that guy.
And, yeah, man. Well, we'll all get back together again. But so anyway, so Brophy sees me at the bar, and he's saying hi and everything. And he walks over to me, and you just because you play wireless guitars, so there's no cables, so that's how Brophy's able to walk around the room. He just walks around and wherever he wants to go. So he came up to me and he just gives me his guitar and walks away in the middle. It's like in the middle of your solo, and I start soloing. I'm like, okay. And the guy next to the bar is, I'm kind of talking to him a little bit, and he looks over and he's like, holy shit, like he can't believe it. Because and it was like some kind of open E jam, and it went on for like 10 minutes or something, and I'm just sitting there soloing, and you just like disappeared. I was like,
I could go take a leak, order a drink, get a bite to eat, come back, and you're still playing, and it's still probably in tune, say, hey, why not,
and I'm at the bar, and the singer, what's that he's like an Elvis impersonator.
Pink, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, so it was on Pink, Michael.
Yeah. So he looks over because he's looking for you, and he looks over at the bar and he sees me playing the guitar, and he just kind of like, okay. He just like shrugs his shoulders like, okay. And it just kept going and going. It was, I know, what? Greg was with me. Greg Mitchell was with me that night.
Yes, he was. You're right.
Yeah. And so Greg was there. Greg knew what was up, but the other guy was like, what's the holy shit?
And Greg was probably laughing his ass off. I wasn't going to say a word to you about it, right?
Oh, he thought it was great, man.
Oh, yeah.
And then finally you came and took the guitar back. And you've done that a few times. Like you'll see me sitting there and you just hand me the guitar.
Yeah. I have one buddy who's still pissed at me because I did that years ago to him, and he'd go, I'm never going to come and see you again. It's like, and he's a good guitar player. I go, fuck you, man. It's like, it's just like, I've had people do that to me, and it's a blast. You
got to give it to somebody who can play, or it's not going to work out too well.
Well, I have done that.
Yeah.
There's this one guy downtown Long Beach. This guy used to come see me, and he would brag about, I can play, Sublime, and I can play this and play that, So it's the end of the night, and I can book you in here. You guys should be playing in here more. My girlfriend works at the bar. I can get you anything. So I walked out, and I'm playing. I just go, boom. I couldn't play shit. He's like, and I had, the big strings on there, and he's like, and he plays a little bit, and he's like, here, man, and it was like, you just kind of, like, well, shut up, or just, like, and there's no one around. So I just like,
it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter, it's like,
yeah,
okay, now you can talk some shit, whatever, man. Like,
See, for me, I felt comfortable because you were doing this like long form jam, and like that's what I do.
But
So I
see,
was like, what's
I know how you play, and you can pretty much sit in on pretty much any situation. You know, like, could
maybe?
you know music? Well, no,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know music enough to know, you know, even if it's not just one chord or whatever, you know.
yeah.
I mean, because
Thank
sometimes,
you.
man, those long jams just get boring as hell. You know, we'd probably already done that song 20 minutes when I gave you the guitar. We probably minutes, you know.
He's such a
But
great
anyway,
kid,
you know,
man.
like, you know, I mean, to me, that's part of the joy of like other good players being in the room. You know, it's
Oh
like,
yeah, the singer could barely stand up, man. He was like,
oh,
oh,
oh yeah, yeah,
it was
Mike.
awesome.
And the thing is, Mike's a really good singer, and
Yeah.
he's a really good songwriter. He's got about 3 records out that are really good.
Uh,
I mean, he's toured Europe with Kid Ramos and Kurt Fletcher and you know, Paul on bass and just some really great players on his records, and you know, played around LA area and stuff, you know. So
yeah.
but yeah, yeah. But
So
anyway,
in 2008, so you made a solo CD called Nighthawkin', which I love. I was checking that out today. Very cool record, you know. What would you describe like? I mean, you could just call it a rock and roll record, but it's blues, but it's not blues. It's kind of like it's like your blues ability thing. You know what I mean? Like because you have an
it's,
instrumental on there, and that's not a
oh,
blues. It's
yeah,
very melodic.
there's one called I don't know, and Dave Gore was writing the chart out for it, you know, when we were after we done it, you know, and it's like, you know, what's the name of the song? I don't know. He goes, what? I go, I don't know, because it didn't have a name, so he wrote, I don't know. So that's where you go, okay, that's it. You know, so it's like, okay, that's a good one, you know, and that's a
Yeah,
very, you know, I don't know what you call it, but there's a lot of variety on the record. And I've
yeah.
never done really a solo. I did a record. Some point I had it mastered about 3 years ago, and I recorded it in the mid '90s and never put it out. Just financial and blah blah blah. And then I got the Lee thing and like in '97, and so I kind of got out of the blues lap thing there, and my style changed a bit with Lee. Um, Still
Because
blues and still rockabilly feel, but you know, when playing with Lee wasn't really, when I got with him, I he started he did a 3-piece for a long time, because with Stray Cats with
right.
Brian, he always did a 3-piece, and he did 2 records with Mike Eldred and Hank Devon, um uh Big Rockers, Lee Rockers Big Blue is what they called it, and a lot of that was like kind of rock and blues. You
Mhm.
know, I don't know if you know Mike Eldred, but his style is just he's like Hendrix meets Scotty Moore.
Whoa, Greg was telling me that I should interview him, so
Yeah,
I probably should try to if I can.
yeah, he's and him and I played in a bunch of different bands. Him and I played in a band together for a while, and that was really insane. Because we both do what. In fact, that the first time I ever met Mike, it was like, because I'd been working with this drummer. He said, "Yeah, come down and see us in this place down in I forget what it was, Hawaiian Gardens or something." And I walked in, you know, I'm sitting at the bar, you know, and Mike's playing. He kind of walks around like this, and all of a sudden just goes and hands me the
Same
guitar.
deal, same deal. Yeah,
Same
yeah.
fucking deal, you know. And I've done that before, and you know, and he'd seen me play, and I didn't know that, you know. And he goes, and we've been friends ever since. So, but I mean, him and I were man, it was great. A few times we'd be playing and wireless and get up on one end of the bar and both, and we'd come this way, man. And I remember this one night out in Covina, this girl decided she was going to get up on the bar and dance with us and everything. And Mike's a little taller than me, and I'm a little smaller than him, you know. And it was sandwich time. It was crazy, man. It was just, and Mike's just such a wild man. Hey, look who's here. Hey.
What's this one's name?
This is Django,
Django Reinhardt, baby.
Busted in.
Django.
Django. He's named after a comedian friend of Candy's. I don't really know him, but I used to see him all the time. He was around Detroit in the early 70s and late 60s, and he was this basically clown and had this and would do these wild things like in the middle of campus or on stage, but he would have a live band with him, like this live jazz rock band. You know,
Wow.
stuff to everything, and the guitar player was great, and he ended up moving to Amsterdam, and now he's got a clown school in Barcelona. And
Nice.
he's but like anybody in comedy, or you got to be really smart, to do all these.
Yeah, of course.
So anyway, we named him after that because everybody goes Django. It's like, no, it's Jango, which is that guy's name. So.
Oh, so it's not DJANGO. Oh, because I was like, I thought you named after Django Reinhardt.
Oh. Ouch! There, you can kind of see him there.
Yeah,
he's a great man. He's a great Pyrenees. So,
nice.
Yeah, he's my buddy. You want to go outside? There you go.
So is Nighthawkin your only solo CD, or did you do some other ones?
Sorry, I had to interrupt the show.
Oh, that's okay.
I did another one called Hill and Dale. That
that's buddy, right.
Al Hill. My buddy is a great singer. He worked with Betty LaVette for about 16 years. And then the last few years, he lives in Nashville now, but him and I had a few bands together, and we had a house in Ann Arbor. We used to call it the Den of Iniquity. And, because we both worked in a bunch of bands and we'd both rehearse there. So it was just this, it's kind of band house, where everybody came and partied after your show. Oh, where do you play tonight? Where do you? It's like, it's like, and everybody knew everybody because Ann Arbor is a fairly small town, and we all, yeah. But anyway, him and I, my best friend passed away actually 10 years ago this year, and she was, besides my wife, she was like my closest best friend for years, and she married a good friend of mine. And when we lost her after about a year, he goes, man, you guys never recorded a record together. And we were going to do a bunch of originals and stuff, but he was on the road a lot then, and I was on the road a lot with Lee. And so we could never hook up. And a few times I was in Nashville and we recorded some stuff there. It never happened. Anyway, long story short, it was about 5 years after we started to do it that we finally finished off some of it and finished the thing. And, there's only one original. It's all cover stuff. But it's some great stuff on there. Some of it's like so fillers, like, I wish I hadn't have done that one, but that's
how it goes, man.
It's the way how it goes, and Al's a great singer. And we just kind of did every other song, I do one, he do one, and that's kind of how we placed it on there, So other than that, but it's cool. I used to play a lot of that stuff with my own band. I played a couple of those songs with the Brohams, with Greg and Chris, and Mike, and I try to do some of them that Al sings because he's such a soulful singer. But after Betty LaVette, he ended up working with Caroline Carter, or who's and another buddy had been playing with her who's from Ann Arbor also, a guy named Chris Casella, who's a fucking amazing guitar player also. Hang on, let me close this door.
Yeah.
Anywho.
So obviously before COVID, so you have like as of now, you have a few bands. You have the Brohams with Greg and with Chris Smith and Mike Malone. and then you have your own band still with Dave Gore, right? And is it TC on drums?
He's mostly been there because Dave Kiddo was playing with me for years,
Mm-hmm.
and Ron Felton also, who's a great drummer.
Sure. Yep.
And people get busy doing shit,
Sure.
and then you got to hire somebody else, and then if you got to, and you know how if you hire somebody, it changes the sound of what you're used to or what you want to do, and you have to kind of mold things in a certain direction. And it's like,
Especially the drummer. The drummer is like has the whole sound of the band. The drummer.
Yeah.
To me, like in the jazz world.
Damn.
I know, but it's cool. It's like when you get, because you can get 3 different drummers and they're all equally as good, but each one changes the sound of the band completely, which is kind of fun.
Yeah.
Kind of like, ooh, you sound like this tonight.
Yeah, it makes you play a little differently, or differently. Is that right?
Yeah.
Let me look in there. See if that spelled correctly.
So let's talk gear for a minute, because I have to wrap it up pretty soon. But like you have some killer gear, and I always love the stuff that you play. You've got that Chris Fleming Telly, and then I think you have like a Trussart, right? That's a cool guitar.
I have 2 other Chris Fleming Tellys also, and I have a Chris Fleming Strat.
Okay, nice. That's awesome, man. Those boutique guitars are addictive, aren't they? Like,
yeah.
Once you get used to them, man.
The Strat and one of the other ones he built before he was a master builder at Fender.
Yeah.
So those are like, those are Chris Fleming's, but they're not. It's like, yes, they are. And Chris goes, God, I built some good shit back then too, didn't I? But yeah, you did.
And then you have that big ass Gretsch amp. What model is that? Is that like, was that made by Fender or something in the 90s or something?
Victoria.
Oh, Victoria, that's right.
Yeah. And they did a run of those with Gretsch. They did the Variety, that's a 40 watt. I had 2 of those at one point, and 2 of them sounds really good together.
That's a fat amp, man. That's like, I see you with that one a lot, because that's like, that's the thing with the big sound. I'm with you. Like, what do you think nowadays? Like, you notice how, like, I mean, the blues world's different than like the pop world. The pop world has been completely neutered. I mean, there's not even amps anymore. You're playing into computers now, which is a whole other thing. But
everything's completely modeled, and that modeled speaker, and
But there's something, man, to be said about playing loud and volume, because I swear, when you have to turn down in rock and roll, it just doesn't sound as good, because the drummer has to hit hard for the true sound of rock to be there. And if the drummer is hitting hard, you got to turn up to be able to compete with it. So it just kind of has to be loud.
And even just to be able to have the headroom on it, it's like, I mean, you've been to some gigs where I'm playing through my deluxe or like smaller amps and stuff, and I think it's good tone also, but it's not like that Gretsch, or I don't know if you've ever heard me play through my 65 Super, and that's like,
man,
it's killer, and it's heavier than the Gretsch, but the Gretsch has like been my number one since 08.
Yeah,
I got that. And they made that one, and then they made a 20 watt, the same identical pattern except 20 watts. I think that was 6V6s versus 6L6s in it, and that had a single 15.
Wow,
and that was killer. I tried to get one of those, and then they ended up giving me another one of the 310s instead. Which, okay, I'll take it. So and then they made a smaller one, like a 12 watt with no reverb and tremolo, and that one didn't sound as good, the single 12 in it, but the vibrato in there's sort of like, it's not really tremolo, it's more like an old magnetone.
Man, those sound good.
They sound really cool, because it's real organic, almost like an organ, so because I do some Lonnie Mack style stuff, and he always played through magnetones.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if you know who Lonnie Mack is at all.
Yeah, I know. I know who he is. I don't know. I mean,
that
I don't.
song "Satisfy Susie," I do. He
Okay.
That was a song of his, and on his record, Stevie Ray played on that. And
Right.
and
He's a big influence on Stevie Ray. He played a Flying
oh,
V, right?
yep, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And first time I went to see him in Ann Arbor, it was like this buddy was like this. He was this other big rock star around Ann Arbor and Detroit, and he goes, "Now watch this, man. He doesn't vibrato this way. All his vibrato is in his right here and his amp, and his whammy, everything was a drop D. And it was like,
Wow.
whoa." And it just, there's this huge sound about something about when you drop a guitar down, man.
Oh yeah, it gets raunchy, man.
Yeah, it's
I
like,
like it.
and so you obviously you play different, because if you're hitting as hard as you do with regular, because I'm kind of a hard player, so I'm not easy on guitars.
Yeah, that's good though. But with those 12s, you can hit it harder. That's the
Yeah.
thing, is because when you have the lighter strings, you have to play lighter, or it just sounds terrible,
Well, it's like, like Billy Gibbons, he plays with eights.
I know, isn't that crazy?
And I was just talking to my buddy Chris a couple days ago, Fleming, who knows him, and he says it's amazing because he can play, but he has this really light touch.
You have to play light.
You have to play light, obviously, otherwise it just goes, like,
Yeah.
So.
Man, talk about tone, man. Jesus, Billy Gibbons, man. He's the king of tone.
Yeah. The Rev, baby.
The Rev, man. I love him. That deluxe you have is amazing, man. I want to get a vintage one so bad, but they're so freaking expensive now.
What?
The deluxe reverb, like a 65,
Oh, yeah.
I want to get one, but they're so expensive, man. And like, you can get a boutique copy now for so much cheaper that's just as good, but it still doesn't look as cool as a real deluxe though.
Yeah.
It just looks so cool.
Mine's
They
cool,
sound
but
great.
I got it years ago, and it's like got some holes drilled in the side, and someone had stuck a preamp in it, and I got it for $1.75, and this is like 25 years ago. Yeah, but then
175.
yeah, and it sounded good, but I brought it to my buddy who worked on amps at the time, and I just go, put it back to all original caps, everything, man. So for another $100, you put it right back, and then put a Slush and Vintage 30 75 in there, and I put that in probably like 20 years ago, and I was doing some recording, and we swapped a couple speakers around and put that one in. It was like it's been in there ever since, And,
Man, I had a 65 Vibrolux for a minute.
Oh,
I brought it to your gig when you were playing in the at the Gaslight. Or gas lamp.
Yeah.
Okay. And it was weird. It was when I played with you that day, I decided to sell it that day. I bought it from our buddy Eric, and he gave me a good deal on it. It wasn't 100% original, and one of the transformers wasn't original. And for some reason, man, that amp hated humbuckers.
Wow.
Like anything with humbuckers, it just was mud.
Wow.
But with a Strat through there, it was like unbelievable. But like, that's the first time that I really had a vintage amp like that. And I was like, I played it with you, and I remember like it sounded so bad, and I played like shit that day, and I was pissed.
Oh, come
on. Fuck. No, I remember I was like, God damn it. And I was so mad. I'm driving home, like, that thing's gone. That's it. They sold it. And it's a shame because I probably should have given it more time, because I probably could have tweaked it more and made it sound great, but whatever, But I want to get a deluxe, but they're like $3,000 now, man.
Yeah. Well, actually, I'd like to have a Princeton. I'd like a Princeton with a 12, a good 12 in it.
Yeah.
And 12 watts, and they're great for recording. And some stuff I did with Lee, two of the records I did with Lee were recorded. One was like like a champ amp, a replica of a champ amp. This guy was building with like a 6-inch speaker in there
Yeah.
in a closet with 2 Sony ribbon, 60 Sony ribbon, placed
Yeah.
here and above, in a
Yeah.
closet that was all tricked out and stuff. And that guy, and the other record I did with him, he had this old airline amp that he refurbed and some Russian amp that had a 5-inch speaker in it. And he had both of those with those 2. And he was the first guy ever that when I played, to me, that sounds like me. You know how you hear something in your head and in the studio, somebody puts it back and they go, oh man, that sounds great. And you go, yeah, it's a good plan, but it doesn't sound like me.
Yeah.
And I've always been real critical of that. It's like, oh man. And that's with Nighthawk, and I recorded that, and I sat on it for almost a year because it was just like, oh my god, somehow it doesn't.
You don't like your sound?
I didn't like my sound, so I brought it to the guy that I'd done like 5 records with, Lee, and I go, here's one song, and I sent it to him. I says, Steve, if you can do anything with this, let me know. If you can, polish this turd, let me know what's going on. And he sent me back a copy in 2 days, and he goes, whoa, that sounds like me. I mean, and that was without any recording him there. It's just him mixing and redoing some stuff.
He cued it for you, probably.
He cued it right, and he knew what I was about already in the studio. Because I'd done a bunch of records with him already,
Yeah.
I know you got to wrap it up, but I got 20 years of Lee stuff I could tell you about.
Yeah. Well, we'll do a part 2 at some point. You know what I mean?
I got a bunch of. I did a bunch of records with Lee. That's great. Got some songwriting on there and a lot of great experiences. And he really helped me. So he helped my career a lot.
Yeah.
And
Well, see, I was gonna. That's what I wanted to kind of wrap up with, because I always try to get, whenever people do this, I try to make sure that whoever's listening can find your music, because you are on Apple. Nighthawkin is on there. Great record, great tunes that you wrote and sang, great stuff. And I know you're on Lee Rocker's stuff is also on there.
Yeah.
So which albums are you on for Lee Rocker?
Well, about 8 of them.
Oh, so all of his solo records, pretty much,
with exception of the last one he put out.
Okay, so all of them up until the last one, Brophy Dale's on those.
Yeah, there's a live one we did at the Mint. You know where the Mint is up in LA? Yeah, we did a live one there. That's one of my favorites because it was live and it was just like
Raw.
That's the way I play.
Yeah.
When I played a bunch of really cool slide on there, which I love. Lee would always. He was very generous with like pushing me playing slide.
Yeah.
Because
you sound good on slide, man.
Thank you. Thanks, man.
I can't play slide.
That little silver tone of mine, man. I record with that thing, an old fucking 1960s Sears guitar.
Yeah.
$200 is the really good $200 I spent on that a few years back. But
do you have high action on it so it's easier to play slide?
Not really, but I mostly have it. Now I have it in an open tuning. But for all the stuff I did with Lee, it was just regular straight tuning. Because when I learned to play slide, I didn't know that it was easier if you just tune the whole fucking guitar to a chord.
Well, that's what most people do. Yeah.
And I was like,
you know what? I'm gonna take a slide lesson with you. I want to learn how to play slide. I really do, because I'll fool around with it sometimes and play with a record, and after about an hour, I'll start kind of getting it. Not saying it, you can learn it in an hour, but I just know that if I put time into it, I could get it. But
I'll do that for a trade. You show me some shit, and I'll show you. And I'll show you some shit.
I'll show you some shit you'll never know. You'll never want to play.
I'll probably never remember.
Well, hey man.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for doing this. It was great. I'm glad you're able to do it finally, and I'm glad to get some more variety on my show. I want to do more of it. I hope Josh Smith said he's going to do it. We'll see what happens. I'd love to get him.
Yeah, I'd love to see that, man. I didn't know you knew him, man.
We both grew up in Lauderdale
too, didn't he? What's that?
We both grew up in Lauderdale. I used to jam with him when he was a little kid.
Wow.
Yeah, so I'll tell
Yeah,
that
he's
story.
amazing. God,
He's a
it's like he'll
monster.
go from just, like, different genres, of
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
stuff. I don't know him, but I've seen him play a bunch.
Yeah,
I've
no,
seen
he's a
him.
great player. He can play. He mixes, blues and funk and R&B and country and jazz, and he kind of mixes it into all this stuff.
I love that. And
Yeah, man, very cool.
it's still, he kind of has his own. Once you start listening to certain players, you understand that's their sound. Like
Yeah,
sometimes you hear a player and they're really good, but I don't know who that is.
right. Yeah,
It's really good. Who is that? Well,
yeah,
oh, that's Larry Coryell, of course.
yeah,
Right.
yeah,
I mean, there's,
yeah,
certain people have, there's a sound that there's there, so.
yeah. Well, that's what you have a sound. I hear you. I know who you are. You're not just playing some, BB King licks or whatever. So that's what I like. You're playing,
Thank
very
you.
soulful, very just got a lot of swagger and piss and vinegar. And I love that. It's awesome.
Ooh, I'll drink to that.
So cheers, brother. We'll
Man.
I can't
Yeah,
wait till we can get together and jam again soon because I always love playing with you too.
absolutely, man. We'll hope the shit show is done soon, man.
It'll be, man. It'll be.
I'm an old guy, so I got my first vaccine a little over a week and a half ago.
Yeah.
I'm in Long Beach, so we're trying to get in line for the next one, but
And then you can relax. Then you'll be, good to go.
Well, that's, my wife's like, let's get the hell out of here. We got to go somewhere,
Yeah.
we
Yeah,
got to
yeah.
wait till we can. And I have a feeling things will get better. It's just going to
It
take
will.
a minute. So
It'll take some time.
it's going to take some time, man. But I look
Yeah,
forward when you and I can do some playing again and
absolutely.
look at each other over a screen and stuff, man. But
Yeah.
not is a bad thing at all, man. But
Yeah.
no.
Well, we'll have a drink, we'll jam and have some fun, brother. So God
Absolutely.
bless. We'll talk to you
Yeah.
soon, man.
All right. So, are there anything special I have to do to just turn my computer off now? Or
I'll end the meeting and then that'll be it. And then
okay,
it'll just disappear.
oh man. Well,
All
thanks,
right,
man.
buddy.
I appreciate it, man.
Thank
Take
you,
care,
man.
and we'll see you when we see you. I mean, let me know what's going on with all this, and when it's up, so I can watch it and get embarrassed. And
You got it. I'll text you.
okay, man.
Bye, buddy. We'll see you.
I get to see it before it's out.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
no, I'll just put it out.
Okay, all right.
You did great. You have nothing to be embarrassed about.
Okay,
You did
cool. All right, cool, man. Well, thanks, man, and
Okay.
take care, and we'll talk soon.
Okay, buddy. We'll see you.